there was a beach in which there were a lot of starfish which were washed ashore. And all the starfish were lying on the beach, right? There were literally tens of thousands of them. And there was one guy who was walking on the beach and he was picking up one starfish by one and throwing it back into the ocean so that it could survive, right? And another guy comes and asks him, why are you bothering? There's 10,000 starfish. You will never be able to hit all of them. What difference is it going to make? And the guy says, as he picks up a starfish and throws it back into the sea, he says, it's going to make a difference to this one that I'm throwing in.
Welcome to the Business Developer Podcast with Sujay, a source of inspiration for business developers. By listening to this podcast, you may gain some ideas, inspirations, or food for thought towards your own journey of developing your business successfully, now or in the near future. Thanks to many of you who liked the previous episode with Raghav Radhakrishnan, wherein we discussed the art of winning large deals. We also talked about decision making. Decisions are made emotionally and justified rationally. Our success in life, including business, are determined by the decisions we make. In today's episode, we shall talk about the flip side of sales, which is marketing. The role marketing plays in developing a business is unquestionable. The why hasn't changed. However, the how has evolved, which has opened up opportunities for even small and medium businesses to leverage marketing in achieving profitable growth in their business. Let us learn about that from today's guest, Priyadarshini Sharma, VP Asia Pacific at McCormick Company. So please join me in welcoming our guest, Priyadarshini Sharma. Hello Priya, welcome to the Business Developer Podcast. Thanks for taking out time to join this episode.
Thanks, Sujay. Thanks. It's great to be here and good to be speaking to you.
Thank you, Priya. Just to give you a brief about this podcast, Priya, this objective of this podcast is to provide a 360-degree view of all aspects involved in developing a business, thereby be a source of inspiration for the listeners. So to get started, Priya, if you can share the story of your life and help the listeners know you, learn about you.
Sure. I'm from India originally, and I have over 20 years of experience working in various countries, various brands, also across different industries. In terms of education, I did a master's degree in finance and accounting, and then I did a MBA in marketing from IIM Indore. While my training is in marketing, you can say that I am actually a bit more of a general management professional as well, because I have kind of been involved in both the finance side as well as the more business building side. The last 20 years, I think I can say that I've really been inspired by insights. That's kind of the holy grail of unlocking any business growth and across various different industries. The other thing which I think which is special in terms of how I approach learning is that I do have a growth mindset and a learner's mindset, and I approach things with the curiosity and humility, which I think is really important in terms of trying to unlock those insights which can drive business growth going forward. So that's just kind of what my interests are in the last 20 plus years of working.
Well said, Priya. I believe we need to be a professional learner every day of our life in our professionals and to grow every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, especially looking at how fast the world is changing, right? That we have to approach it with, like I said, curiosity and humility
Right.
to really have that mindset of what can I learn from this situation.
That's cool, Priya. Let's focus on the marketing aspects. Marketing is one of the key facets of developing a business. So, my expectation and my thinking is that we can help share some learnings through your experiences, which business developers could follow and benefit from.
Sure.
Yeah, you have been in the marketing domain for 2 decades, Priya. Over this period, and which I believe is a long time given the changes, and you said what we are going through on an everyday basis, in your experience, how have you seen marketing evolve or change in its contribution towards developing a business?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great question. At its core, the function of marketing is about demand generation. And any business, whether it is small or big, requires that demand generation, right? So the why of marketing hasn't changed. The fact is that we need to do some kind of demand generation in order to be able to sell products or services, whether that's B2B or B2C. And the role of marketing, really is to help create that decision or create that first moment of truth where the purchase is made. And I like to always say this is one of my favorite quotes, that humans are not thinking beings that feel, we are feeling beings that think. And, decision making is not fully rational. And that's why it's really important to have marketing to be able to do those storytelling and start building those memory structures which can help in unlocking purchase or purchase behavior. At the core, I really believe that, the why of it has not changed. But what has obviously changed is the how. When I started working back in 1998, I still remember that, I would go to the office and we used to have one desktop, huge, massive desktop. It wasn't an omnipresent thing that you used everywhere. And the internet, of course, now has completely revolutionized the how of marketing, right?
Right.
And there's three things specifically that I'd like to touch on in terms of how the technology has changed marketing. I think the first point is that the way people consume marketing has evolved over the last 20 years. So I still remember, when we were growing up, we used to have one TV station and it was broadcast media, and it was, you just had to consume whatever anybody was saying. But now it's not the case anymore, and people can choose to switch off. It's not one way, first of all, it's a conversation. People demand customization as well because of this much more one-to-one conversation, and it's not that broadcast thing anymore as a one-way piece. The second thing which has changed with the technology is that marketing has now become accessible to every size of business. So, previously we used to say that if you didn't have big money to go on national media and advertise and create those shiny ads, you were wasting your money because you were just not meeting the threshold level of expenses which is required to be able to get anything to scale. But I think that has dramatically changed because with the internet now, marketing is accessible, or rather communication or broad larger scale communication is accessible to every size of business. So that's the second point which has changed, which of course bodes well for folks who are trying to develop a new business or trying to get it off the ground. The third thing which I will say is quite interesting is that when everything is at a click of a button, or where you can Google anything, not doing marketing is also a type of marketing. There is no such thing as hidden. If you don't have a presence, or if you're not putting a message specifically out there, people are finding whatever somebody else is saying about your product or service. So in that sense, it is a big change. I think these three things and the how have changed how marketing is done and how it kind of helps in developing a business.
That's well put, Priya. Just I think what you have said, just to summarize it, one aspect that you said, the point one, the consumption of marketing has evolved. So I believe marketing has become more democratized, right? And marketing is not now only the parlays or the game where the big players play in. The new businesses that gets developed can also have access to all these marketing technologies or marketing techniques or channels. So I see that's a democratization of marketing, and that's where businesses should look at how to leverage marketing even when they are in the early stages of their journey, right? And the second point, like you said, it's not one TV. Everybody has access to marketing, communications, and messages. So I believe personalization of marketing is needed, personalization of messages needed, and that's what every business is trying to strive for. How to what level of detailed or what level of accurate personalization they could achieve, right?
Absolutely.
And the third point you said is very critical. No marketing is still marketing, and there's a lot of word of mouth that gets spread out without you being able to control that. So, how you act in your daily business is very critical. How you act with your individual customer or consumer is very critical.
Absolutely. And I think that's where I really feel like, where previously it used to be considered a cost head. Now, because of technology, it has become better ROI tracking, and, you're able to better see what the benefit is. And that's again why it's becoming more important going forward with different businesses as well.
Yeah. Then, if you take this thinking forward, if such as the opportunities that's there, according to you, what are the key challenges the marketing function faces today to help continue contributing to the business?
I think, the marketing function is often seen as a frivolous part of the business. They're the guys who are wearing the swanky clothes and, going to the big agency meetings and going to five-star hotels and all of that, right? It's unfortunately one of the images that department has, but so which is where, it's often seen sometimes as a frivolous expense because it's also tough to prove causation because there are multiple factors that drive business growth, right? Absolutely. That whether that is the route to market, whether that is the sales orders, whether that is kind of the final after sales service, etc. All these things keep on adding to the business growth going forward. So it's tough to say that it's only marketing that's led to growth. So that's kind of the first point. I think also one of the other things which especially small businesses can face as a challenge is that they are not able to unlock higher levels of support from social and digital platforms. So we know that the Facebooks, Instagram, Googles of the world, they're all they help in joint business planning, right, with the bigger companies, and they actually look at what are their objectives and they create bespoke programs for these companies, and which sometimes can be a little bit difficult for a small business to unlock simply because the resources are limited. And speaking of limited resources, sometimes also access to talent might be limited for a smaller business which is just starting to develop. So, you might not be able to get really experienced people. You might also be lacking on effective processes and competencies. And, when I talk about competencies, there's skills as well as behavioral competencies. And, it's just, it's one of the things where it can be a challenge for a small business to get the marketing function off the ground and to really make it effective.
Yeah, well said, Priya. I think those certainly are the challenges, and I believe the successful businesses find a solution to those challenges or find a way around those challenges to still achieve and meet their goals, right? Let's move to the next aspect, Priya, which I firmly believe in, and I see strong businesses have strong brands. How should a small company with very low or limited budget go about building their brand?
Yeah, sure. I think, like you rightly said, right, building a brand is really important because people will pay more for a brand. It's the truth. I still remember when I was working with a home appliance company, and we used to actually have an OEM supplier, an original equipment manufacturer supplier, who used to supply to this branded company. And we would just literally stick our brand name on it, and the price of it would go up 3x versus the OEM, right? So we know that brands play a very important role in driving business growth and especially in driving more profitable growth going forward.
Right.
We also know that it's really important from a marketing perspective. The two things which will help in driving brand growth is mental availability and physical availability. This is a model from Professor Byron Sharp, where he talks about mental availability is really about the fact that do you think about the brand when you're supposed to go and buy, and is in the first moment of truth. And then when you go to find the brand, is it available where you're buying it? And is it available at the right price and the right format? And that's what physical availability refers to. So both of these have to actually come together in order for a brand to grow. So definitely, like you said, it is very important. Marketing is very important to develop a strong brand, and it is a well, it's complex and not complex, right? I think that people make it more complex than is needed. And that's where, your question about the best practices is an important dovetail into this piece. So I can just, off the top of my head, I can talk about a few best practices for especially for companies who don't have a very big budget, right? So the first and foremost thing, and this is the formula, if you will, is that you must understand the who. And the who, by that, what I mean is that what is the problem you are solving and for whom? And this is a must have, even if you have shoestring budgets. We must, first of all, understand who is the person that we are targeting and what is the problem we are solving for them, right? Then, based on the who, define the what, which means what do we want our brand and our company to stand for? And ideally, what we want to stand for is linked back to the problem that we are solving, right? And that's because that's what will help us be more intuitively building a brand which makes sense. The other best practice, which I will say, is whether you're a big company or a small company, right? The point is that we must be disciplined. And there's a couple of facets of this discipline, right? The first point on discipline is that every activity builds towards the consistent idea. So once you've defined your what based on the who, whatever you do needs to build around that consistent idea for to ensure that every dollar that you're spending is helping to solidify that idea, right?
Right.
There's a big temptation that people have to like try to be everything to everyone, or try to go in different directions simply based on what is the latest news of today. They will try and just say try to ride on that news. Nothing wrong with being topical, but even with topicality must build towards a consistent idea. So your tone and manner should not be different based on what's the topic you're talking about.
Right.
The second facet of being disciplined is spend on activities that actually make a difference. I still remember that we were trying to launch a new brand in China, and the guys were very excited about doing events, because they were like, oh, it's going to be great, and we'll have people coming in, and it's going to be beautiful. And we spent a lot of money reaching like a few thousand people, which made no difference finally to the amount of awareness we had, right? So it's really be disciplined on the activities that make a difference, and that's the point. And then the third thing around being disciplined, and this is again linked to the digital marketing space, where everyone's rushing to create content, and people used to say content is king. I say content is not king, amplification is actually king. Content is queen.
Okay.
Because there's no point in creating content which you can't amplify. There is no such thing as organic reach. Every single digital social platform will tell you that you can put all the content you want, but people will not see it unless you actually put money to amplify it, right?
Hmm.
So that's the other best practice around being disciplined, which is saying, just make sure that you're spending on activities that make a difference and actually amplify stuff that you create. Then I will say one other thing for smaller businesses is to have that mindset of testing and learning. So there's a 70-20-10 rule where we say 70% of the budget goes against proven stuff, 20% goes against adjacent stuff, which is adjacent to something which is proven, and 10 should go into exploratory stuff. So maybe 5 years ago, if we were going to talk about platforms, you could say 70% would go on a Facebook, 20% would go on Instagram, which is an adjacent platform, and 10% maybe would go on something completely different, which is unproven and which is exploratory, just so that you can test and learn to see what is the best ROI for you, or what's the best way to reach your target audience. And so yeah, that's just some best practices that I'll say for a smaller company who has very low budget. Finally, the thing about small companies is that their strengths are agility and creativity, right? So when you have less money, it forces you to be creative. So play to that strength, and really play to that piece, rather than try to emulate the bigger companies, because without the big budgets it doesn't make sense.
Great points, Priya. I think this was really helpful, at least for me. I took some points as a learning experience for myself. I'm sure our listeners who are involved at a similar stage of their company would learn from these best practices and try to adopt some of those or all of those. And as you also talked about, no marketing is marketing. There could be a lot of word of mouth spread. They need to also continue focusing on their customers, continue to give value to their customers, and see that also as a channel to build their brand, right?
Absolutely. That's where I said, we have to always start with the who.
Hmm.
And remember that at the end of the day, the who is also not a company, it's people.
That's true.
Because you are trying to meet someone at the level where it'll help them open their minds to whatever is the problem that you're trying to solve. So think about the touch points based on that.
Right. And most of the decision making is not rational. There's a lot of emotion built into the decision making.
Absolutely. It's funny you say this. I was just having a chat the other day with a friend who is actually he's doing a B2B platform now, and he's looking at growing it, and they've just got a couple of rounds of funding, and they're looking at expanding their business, and they were looking for a CMO. And they were saying that, oh, should we get a tech CMO? Should we get somebody who's like really knows the technology? And what we actually discussed is that no, maybe you should get somebody who's done CPG, who's done consumer goods, because you need somebody who's able to do that storytelling, which appeals to even the person who's buying on the other side. Even if he's buying on behalf of a business, it needs to be a compelling storytelling. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that example. I'm sure some of our listeners may be in a similar stage, exactly facing the same situation. Yeah, we many times get into a stereotypes thing that, okay, I have a technology company. How should I get my CMO, the chief marketing officer? What should be the background? And that's a key important decision. But as you said before, the people, the skills that you bring in, the team that you develop, that's another part of your success, right? Now, if we just try to focus on the flip side of it, what are the pitfalls then the companies needs to avoid in their brand building journey, in their journey of leveraging their marketing function towards profitable business growth?
if it's an interesting question, I can literally say 10 things
Yeah.
of the pitfalls, which, I can today I can say proudly it's through I've learned it the hard way through failures, over the last 20 years. And I can really say that this is stuff which I know we need to avoid and learn from other people's mistakes. I think the first point is really there is a trap which exists to burn through a lot of cash and still not move the needle. And what I mean by that is that, you can be busy in, like, getting a lot of money spent on stuff which is not actually impacting the who that you are trying to target. So, give you an example. If you are trying to talk to, for example, in a B2B client whose key pain point is that the machinery is taking too long, or, the machinery is not effective enough, then having a celebrity come and talk about how great they think the machine is probably not going to convince the guy that, the thing is solved. But you spent a lot of money on buying that celebrity, and, burn through a lot of cash, but it's still not going to move the needle in terms of actually what is the problem that you're trying to solve and for whom. The other point on this one is, I have seen this also quite often, that people mistake activity for result. There's a lot of busy fools who do a lot of stuff. They'll be creating Facebook posts, and they will be kind of putting stuff on LinkedIn and creating all kinds of, content, etc. And that's activity because they keep themselves busy, but it's not actually having any result or impact. So, that's the other point on marketing, is that you really have to sit and think about, what can I do with the time that I have, which is really going to make a difference? And keep going back to the who, keep going back to what's the problem you're going to solve. The other thing, I've seen this also is, if you have no money, or if you have very little money, then there is a temptation to do nothing. This is actually a bit of an issue. And I like the story someone told me, of that there was a beach in which there were a lot of starfish which were washed ashore, and all the starfish were lying on the beach, right? There were literally tens of thousands of them. And there was one guy who was walking on the beach, and he was picking up one starfish by one and throwing it back into the ocean so that it could survive, right? And another guy comes and asks him, why are you bothering? There's 10,000 starfish. You will never be able to hit all of them. What difference is it going to make? And the guy says, as he picks up a starfish and throws it back into the sea, he says, it's going to make a difference to this one that I'm throwing in, right? And this for me is a really powerful metaphor for, if you don't have big budgets, or if you don't have big money, start small, but do something, and that will make a difference. You'll continue to build on it, and it'll have a cumulative effect over a period of time, rather than say, I have no money, I'm going to do nothing. And then, you'll never grow to that level, or you'll never hit the potential, because you'll just kind of be talking to yourself in that sense.
And but doing that, you need to still have a balance of not being turning into a busy fool, right, Priya? And do nothing. There's should be some intelligence and thinking in what exactly to be done.
Absolutely. And that's why, when I started this chat, right, I said the holy grail is insight.
Right.
So knowing who are you talking to and what is the problem that you're solving. If you keep going back to that as your touchstone for every activity that you do, then whether it's a small activity or not, it will make a difference. So that's kind of where I'm going. That, of course, I agree. It's not that we don't want to be busy fools, but do something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Let's carry forward. Good.
Yeah, I think some of the other pitfalls is, again, lack of clarity on what you want to stand for, or lack of commitment to that vision, and you keep changing it, therefore, whereby you then end up standing for nothing. And this is, again, it's every time a new brand manager comes on board, they think that they have to change the vision of the brand. And I think that's something to avoid as well. That's definitely a pitfall, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help, and it's actually more helpful to start building a brand, build a foundation, before you think of changing it. The other thing which I've seen is also, there's a focus on fixing symptoms,
Hmm.
and not fixing the actual root cause. And this is, this applies to various facets of the business, but it certainly applies to commercialization or marketing. So, if we find that, I'll give you an example, right? This company used to specialize in making computers, and they used to sell it online. It was one of the first companies to sell. They had a online, they never had an offline presence, right?
Okay.
And so people had to call in to the company, and they had to come and say, what they were looking for, what they wanted. And then the company would kind of prepare it and ship it out to them.
Okay.
And I was actually working as a strategic planner at that time. I was working on the communication side. And they were saying, oh, you know what, the calls are not coming in as much as we want, and we just need to we need to get better operators, or we need to get more discount, we need to get a deeper discount, and that's how we will be able to convert this, right? So they were focusing on the symptom, which was that the calls are not coming in, or the calls are not getting converted, and they immediately landed on, we must give higher discount.
Right.
And I always say a higher discount is the weapon of the marketeer who has nothing else to say. You know, it's like, okay, cheap, cheap, cheap is the last word that you can say as a marketeer, because you have nothing else to say, right? So this was an issue where, they didn't attempt to understand the root cause. So once we started digging into this a little bit on what's happening with the call, that why is it not coming, right? We actually found that the media that it was going in was actually all wrong. So it was not even reaching the right people. The kind of the media that was going out to say that this is the number to call, etc., was not reaching the right people. Then the second point was that even if it was reaching them, the way that the message was put was not appealing to them. So therefore, it was just going straight into the dustbin, right? So which means that the root cause of people not calling was not that they wanted higher discounts. It was just that they were not seeing your message at
Right.
all. So understanding the root cause is very important before you start acting on fixing symptoms, as an example, right?
True.
The final piece, which I will say, and this I've seen especially with folks who don't have very big budgets, is that they will try to put everything into one piece of paper, or into one touch point. Trying to cram too much information into it is also not helpful. So really, when you have less money, actually think about what is the one thing I want people to remember about my service or my brand, and just hammer the hell out of that, rather than trying to say 50 different things, which then doesn't mean anything to anyone, right? So the getting to that golden message, or that communication message strategy, going back to the who of what is the problem you're going to solve, that's really important. And don't fall into the pitfall of trying to say too much, and because you have less money.
Great, Priya. Well said. I think these learnings and the pitfalls small businesses or any business, I will say, for that matter, needs to keep in mind and thereby generate more effectiveness from their marketing function, from their brand building, and thus help them in a profitable business growth. Good, Priya. I think this is a great learning experience for me to learn a lot of new things from you. As we draw close to this episode, Priya, there's one question that I like to ask many of our guests coming and learn from their perspective. The context is that, Priya, as we grow through our careers, through our life, we take on many good habits and good practices that at that point of time helps us, makes our life much better, makes us more successful. But then, as we talked of also, is we live in a fast changing world and we need to keep learning. We need to become a professional, curious learner, student of life. So have you faced experiences where you needed to unlearn something from the past to learn something new in the present to make you more successful in the present or for the future?
Yeah, for sure. I think, Sujay, that's a great question, and you're right that it's especially relevant right now because of the way that our world has changed in the last 6 7 months, right? In terms of the with COVID kind of being the order of the day, and it's very interesting. I was actually living in China when COVID had first started, and then we've just after that we've moved to Singapore, but. It's really, I think that it's been a process of steep learning. I joined a new company a new company I joined where I've actually never met anyone physically. It's all been it's all been online, right? So I think one of the things which I'll say that is something that I've had to unlearn or create a different way of doing, is this idea of how to make connection.
Mm-hmm.
Where previously you could meet people and you could kind of feel the energy and feel the interaction, and when you meet face to face, it's a completely different quality of interaction, if you will.
Right.
But now that we are in a video conferencing world, now I've had to learn a little bit more of how can I create those connections, or how can I create those relationships,
Right.
which are very important, of course, for doing business, right? It's really the informal communication that fosters faster decision making, and actually fosters better decision making as well. So that's one of the things that I think I've had to learn. In the absence of a water cooler, how can I create a virtual water cooler and build those relationships in this time? I think that's one of the things that I've had to learn. The other thing, more from a marketing perspective, is that previously, when we used to have campaign evaluations, it used to be done at the end of the campaign, right? So you put a campaign out there, and then you put all the money on it, and then at the end of the campaign you find out, okay, how did I do? But this doesn't work anymore, especially because a lot of stuff is happening in the digital social space, where everything happens very, very fast. So, kind of course correcting on the go, also tracking and making sure that you're doing that A/B testing and putting your best foot forward. That's something which I've had to learn as well. So I've unlearned the thing around wait for put all the money behind the campaign, have faith in it, and keep seeing it through. That's something I've had to unlearn,
Okay.
and actually said, okay, let's track after 1 week. Let's track and see what is the kind of response we're getting, especially to digital or social campaigns, and then see what we need to change, or how we need to course correct, so that we can make the best use of resources. It's really dynamically allocate resources based on what you're learning, rather than commit resources up front and wait for the end to see how you performed. I think that's one of the big learnings which has happened as well in the last few years.
That's great, Priya. Thanks for sharing those. Those are really insightful. And the challenge that you've mentioned about COVID times, which each one of us going through, and more so for business developers, wherein developing a business has been very much about personal touch, right? Building those relationships and again connecting, as we are more feeling beings than thinking. That's the real challenge everyone is grappling with. As you said, how to bring on those virtual coffee machine discussions, how do you build relationships, how do you build trust while being remote. Thanks a lot for sharing this.
Yeah, exactly. I think that can be the another subject of one of your podcasts, Sujay.
Yeah, truly, truly, I think so. Very good today, Priya. I think that was really nice, really insightful. Was good. Thank you, Priya, for coming in here. Just one last question. If some of our listeners need to contact and connect with you, if they are in a similar problem or would like to discuss some marketing and business development topic with you, how could our listeners reach out to you?
Yeah, I can be reached on LinkedIn. And again, I want to say it's my pleasure to have spoken to you today, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And I really look forward to listening to more of your sessions going forward.
Thank you, Priya. I'm also in a learning journey here. We need to learn every day. Thank you then. Have a nice day ahead. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Ajay. You too. Thank you. Bye.
Not doing marketing is also a type of marketing. If you do not put out a message about your business by yourself, your target customers are going to make their own impression of your business based upon what they hear from whatever is being said by others. That was one of my learnings from the conversation with Priya. What did you learn? Hope this episode has helped you to gain ideas, inspirations, or food for thought towards your own journey of developing a business and leveraging marketing in that journey. Thanks to those who have given positive ratings to this show. Do give me a high five if you liked this episode. I also would love to hear your feedback and suggestions for improvement. If you'd like to get your question answered, just record it and email it to me. I would make sure to play your question and get that answered in one of my upcoming episodes. Or if you'd like to share your story through the Business Developer podcast, pitch it to me. My contact information is provided in the episode notes. That's it for now. See you again in the next episode of the Business Developer podcast. Stay happy, healthy, curious to learn. And go ahead and leverage marketing in your business. Bye for now.